You learned to stay quiet. Not because you had nothing to say, but because it was safer that way. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system figured out that being honest wasn't safe. Expressing yourself brought consequences: anger, rejection, judgment, or worse, complete emotional disconnection. So you stopped speaking and started swallowing. You swallowed your tears. You swallowed your anger. You swallowed your needs, your disappointments, your fears. At first, it seemed like the best way to survive. You told yourself, it's not a big deal. I'll get over it. There's no point in starting a fight. But that silence didn't disappear. It built up. It settled in your throat. It tightened in your chest. It crawled into your stomach. And now you're choking on the things you never said. Not because you want to, but because the voice inside you is screaming to be heard. This is not just emotional. It's biological. The body keeps the score. And the silence you used to protect yourself is now the very thing destroying you from within. In this video, we'll walk into that silence, not to blame the version of you that stayed quiet, but to finally listen to what they've been dying to say. When you were younger, staying silent wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was how you kept yourself safe in a world that didn't feel emotionally safe. Maybe your feelings were dismissed. Maybe your words were twisted. Maybe you were punished for expressing what was true for you. So your nervous system adapted. It learned to freeze, to shrink, to observe rather than speak, to avoid conflict at any cost. You became the quiet one, the one who never made a scene, the one who smiled through the discomfort, who said, "I'm fine," even when your heart was breaking. At first, people praised you for it. You're so mature. You're so calm. You're so easy to be around. But what they called maturity was actually suppression. What they saw as calm was inner paralysis. And what they celebrated as emotional strength was a child, just trying not to be hurt. This silence served you once. It helped you survive. But now, it's keeping you stuck. It's stopping you from asking for what you need. It's preventing you from setting boundaries. It's making you tolerate things that quietly destroy you. That's the thing about swallowed pain. It doesn't disappear. It becomes fatigue, anxiety, overthinking, resentment. It becomes a body screaming what your mouth never could. You've been telling yourself, it's all in my head. But your body knows better. That tightness in your throat when someone crosses your boundary, that tension in your chest when you want to speak but can't, that exhaustion that hits you even after sleeping all night, that's not random. That's not weakness. That's communication. The body remembers everything the mind tried to forget. Every time you silenced your truth to keep the peace, your body took the hit. Every time you avoided conflict and smiled through the pain, your body absorbed what your heart couldn't carry alone. Eventually, the silence becomes too heavy. It becomes a lump in your throat, a stomach that always aches, a back that always hurts, a constant fatigue that no doctor can explain. Not because you're broken, but because your body has been screaming what your voice couldn't say. And maybe you're not tired from life itself. You're tired from holding everything in. If this feels familiar, you're not alone. That's why we created this space, to speak the things that were never allowed, to bring light into what was hidden.
If you're ready to hear the voice you've been silencing for years, stay with us. And if this message speaks to you, consider subscribing. This might be the first time someone truly understands you.
To heal the silence, we have to understand where it began. No one is born afraid to speak. You came into this world with a full voice, crying, laughing, expressing without shame. But over time, something shifted. Maybe it was the parent who rolled their eyes when you cried, the teacher who told you to stop being so sensitive, the friend who mocked your vulnerability, or the partner who withdrew every time you tried to open up. You learned the same painful lesson over and over, that speaking your truth pushes people away, that your emotions are too much, that love is conditional based on how easy, quiet, or agreeable you are. So you adapted. You became emotionally fluent in silence. You read the room before you spoke. You edited your feelings before you shared them. You started holding your breath in conversations, waiting for the right moment to be real. A moment that rarely came. And over time, you stopped looking for it. This wasn't just a habit, it was protection. A way of staying connected to people who couldn't handle your full self. But here's the hard truth. When you abandon your voice to keep others close, you end up abandoning yourself. The silence didn't just keep others comfortable, it kept you small. And now, that smallness is suffocating. Every time you silenced your truth, a piece of you went quiet too. You didn't just stop expressing your anger, you disconnected from what made you feel violated. You didn't just avoid expressing your sadness, you forgot how to grieve. You didn't just hold back your needs, you stopped recognizing what they even were. Now, when someone asks how you feel, you freeze. Not because you don't feel anything, but because the habit of suppression runs so deep that even you can't reach the truth anymore. This is what chronic silence does. It erodes your relationship with yourself. You start to question, am I overreacting? Is this even valid? Maybe I'm just being dramatic. You lose confidence in your own emotions. You second-guess your boundaries. You minimize your pain before anyone else gets the chance to. And the worst part, you become so used to this emotional editing that you start showing up in relationships as a version of yourself that's easier to love, more agreeable, less complicated, always composed. But here's the cost. No one can love the real you if the real you never gets to show up. Your silence doesn't just block pain, it blocks intimacy. It keeps people at a distance, even when all you crave is closeness. And beneath all of it is a self you buried to survive.
No matter how hard you try to stay composed, the truth has a way of leaking out. It shows up in your tone, that sharpness you can't explain. It shows up in your body, that tight jaw, clenched fists, shallow breath. It shows up in your relationships, pushing people away or clinging too tightly without fully understanding why. You might think you're in control, but suppressed truth doesn't disappear. It waits, and when it can't wait any longer, it erupts. Maybe in a sudden breakdown, maybe in an argument that goes way too far, maybe in complete emotional numbness. This isn't failure. It's the voice inside you saying, I can't keep doing this. I need to be real. And the more you ignore that voice, the louder it becomes.
not always in words, but in symptoms, in burnout, in emotional detachment, in a chronic sense that something's missing, even when everything seems fine. This is your inner self trying to return. Not the self you perfected, not the self that smiles when hurting, but the raw, whole, messy, deeply human you. The one you had to hide, but never truly lost. Healing begins the moment you stop fighting that voice and start listening.
Reclaiming your voice doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean becoming someone loud, confrontational, or unrecognizable. It means this: letting the real you take up space. Sometimes it starts with a whisper, saying no, even when your whole body wants to people-please. Saying, "That hurt," even when you fear being seen as dramatic. Saying, "I need a moment," without apologizing for it. These may seem like small things, but for someone who learned to survive through silence, they're acts of rebellion, of healing, of self-respect. You don't have to go from invisible to outspoken overnight. Healing isn't a performance, it's a process. A slow unlearning of everything that made you believe your truth was too much. And yes, some people will resist your voice, not because you're wrong, but because they were comfortable with your silence. Let them be uncomfortable. This path isn't about being liked. It's about being real. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. Because every time you do, you send a message to your nervous system. I'm safe now. I don't have to disappear to belong. And slowly, the parts of you that have been hiding start to return.
Healing your voice doesn't just mean finding the courage to speak. It also means grieving the version of you who stayed silent for so long. Not with blame, not with shame, but with tenderness. That quiet self, the one who swallowed pain, avoided conflict, and smiled through the ache, they weren't weak. They were trying to survive. They were doing the best they could with what they had. And in many ways, they kept you safe. They helped you stay connected to people you loved, even when it meant losing parts of yourself. So before you rush to fix your silence, pause and thank the one who held it all in. Because behind that silence was love, a desire to belong, a need to not be left behind. You weren't wrong for wanting that. You were human. But now you don't have to keep carrying what no longer fits. It's okay to release the old strategies, to outgrow what once protected you, to say, I'm not that person anymore. Let yourself mourn what you had to become. Let yourself feel the sadness of years without your voice. That grief is not a setback. It's a door opening. Because when you allow yourself to feel what's been buried, you reclaim not just your voice, but your right to exist fully.
Something shifts the moment you stop editing yourself to be loved. You stop performing. You stop pleasing. You stop explaining your existence. And for the first time, you feel free. Not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer your own captor. You start speaking your needs without guilt. You start feeling anger without shame. You start honoring your boundaries like your life depends on it, because now you understand it does. And you'll notice something else. The people around you begin to change. Some draw closer, finally seeing the depth in you. Others pull away, no longer able to benefit from your silence. Let them go. The cost of being quiet to keep someone is far greater than the cost of being alone with your truth. As your voice returns, so does your energy. You feel lighter, clearer, more grounded in your body. Your nervous system softens. Your heart feels less guarded. And what once felt like a war inside you begins to quiet down. Because when your voice is allowed, your soul can breathe. And slowly, you realize you were never too much. You were never the problem. You were just unheard.
Freedom isn't found in silence. It's found in voice. In the messy, imperfect, powerful act of speaking your truth. When you stop swallowing your pain to keep peace, you open space for real healing. When you stop shrinking to fit into others' expectations, you reclaim your whole self. This journey isn't easy. It asks you to be vulnerable, brave, and patient, but it's the only way to live fully. So today, give yourself permission to be loud when you need to be, to say no without guilt, to cry without shame, to set boundaries without fear. Because your voice is sacred. It carries your story, your pain, your power. And when you let it out, you don't just heal yourself, you heal the world around you. Remember, the silence you learn to swallow isn't your truth. It's the prison you were placed in, and you deserve freedom. Start speaking, start living, start breathing. You are worth being heard.